We are right on the dot at 6:30 and figured it would be a good time to do a live stream about Starship. We've had some news actually drop today before we actually knew that this would happen. We had a live stream planned, but we wanted to talk about Flight 10. Obviously, many of you want to make plans to see the next Starship launch, and there's definitely a lot of activity going down at Starbase with Ship 37. And so we want to talk about the news from SpaceX today regarding the next generation Super Heavy booster, also when Flight 10 may be. So I am joined by Joe Tegtmeyer.
Hello.
Who has been, I'm surprised I caught you here. I'm surprised you're not in a robo-taxi right now.
I know. I might be. I've got another one being worked out on Friday, I think.
So how many rides have you done total?
154.
Okay, that beats my whatever 6 or 7. Yeah, so let's chat about Flight 10 with Starship. Elon posted not too long ago that we're hoping to have it be in August. I still think that's a possibility, but the date has kind of moved around. So at this point, when do you think it's going to be likely?
Well, we got a little piece of that information today because they did a spin prime on Ship 37. So that appears to be the last of the tests that they need. So assuming that they got the data that they need, we should see that moving back to production site. They'll start doing their final preparation work, and then they've got to get the OLM and the cryo systems set back so they can do a launch. And my guess is that both of those are going to take about 10-ish days or so to do, give or take, maybe 1 or 2 the other way. But if we go for 10 days, this is what, the 13th, so that could be the 23rd. That would be a Saturday. I'm actually going to say that my personal opinion is it'll probably be the week of the 25th. So maybe the 25th, maybe the 26th. That's my guess. They have the first of the Not Mars, the notices to mariners out there that suggest the 22nd could be the first date. And then it has, I think, a week or so of dates. So that still fits within that 25, 26. And that's my guess.
Right. And talk about why you think they opted for a spin prime test versus the static fire on the adapter stand.
That's a good question. Well, we know that they did the 2 static fires, a single engine and a 6 engine, and then it looked like it went okay. They took the ship back. They started taking things apart, and then they decided, nah, we need to go back again. From what I'm kind of hearing and thinking about is, for your viewers that know, Ship 36 had a RUD, and it kind of rudded Massey's. Yeah. So SpaceX had to, so SpaceX had to come up with a solution, and they used a old transport stand that they modified that could be like an adapter ring to the OLM and allow the ship to sit on it. And then they did some other connection issue or changes so that they could connect the plumbing, and then they could try to do a static fire. So they were able to do that. But possibly an unintended consequence was when they took the transport stand, they kind of filled in all the sides. They made it all kind of a solid structure. And when they did the static fire, it's possibility that it induced some sort of a pressure issue or some sort of a feedback issue that then they discovered was a damage to one of the RVAC engines. So it required a replacement. And from what I'm hearing is they went back out and they did a spin prime because they didn't want to do another static fire because of that same issue. So the MacGyvered solution allowed them to do the static fire that you're showing, but it may have introduced another issue that they realized afterwards.
That's interesting because, obviously they weren't planning on doing this, but we talked about how maybe it's a more efficient solution in the future. Do you think they'll be able to work out those kinks so that this does become, an effective, option versus just Massey's?
I think they will. I mean, assuming that Ship 37, the Flight 10 goes well and they get a bunch of data, there's one last V2 ship, and they could either do one of 2 things. They could either decide not to fly it, or if they want to fly it, they'll need to do static fire. So maybe with the data that they've got here, they'll do a design modification on that stand adapter, and maybe they'll be able to use that. I still think in some degree, this is a good test for them to figure out how to do this adaptive kind of ring, because it may be useful out at Florida, for example, with the new towers at the Launch Complex at 37. And that would be a way for them to be able to use some of the structures that they're putting in place in a way to allow static fires, which currently they don't have that ability.
Oh, wow. And so talk about, now that we've had the single engine and the 6 engine and then the spin prime test, where are we at now in terms of our checklist? What's left?
Well, they need to roll it back to the production facility because the heat shield's not complete. So they need to finish that. They'll do other checks on the systems to make sure nothing got damaged, or if there's any, other connections or changes or final things that they need to do to the ship, they'll take care of that. Another big thing is that we are somewhat assuming, but I think it's a valid assumption, that the profile for the flight will be very similar to what 7, 8, and 9 wanted to do, which would mean it would involve having dummy Starlink satellites, and they would try to do the dispensing of them in that near orbit trajectory. So they'll need to get those all set and put into the ship. And, so if you add all those things up, 7-10 days, something like that, I think is reasonable, but it could be faster. They used the opportunity over the last several days to add more tiles to the ship, so they weren't just letting it sit there. So they did do some work. So
yeah,
the last thing I would say is that they really do want to get the V2s done. So they really want to push forward for this launch.
Well, I did want to share, speaking of different versions, SpaceX dropped this news today in these photos, the first grid fin for the next generation Super Heavy booster. The redesigned grid fins are 50% larger and higher strength, moving from 4 fins to 3 for vehicle control. So that's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of interesting information here. So from 4 fins to 3, while enabling the booster to descend at higher angles of attack. And I just want to show you the human for scale. What a scary walk that looks like that could be. Don't sit down. Don't trip.
Exactly. Yeah, I saw another picture where somebody put tennis balls on all the little points.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, but just for viewers looking at this, what you are looking at is the grid fin is being manufactured, and it's sitting on a plate, and that plate's kind of a jig that you use to manufacture it. So you see all the little clamps around there, so it's holding it to that plate while they are doing the final assembly and welding and getting it ready to go. So the plate is not part of the grid fin. It's just to manufacture the grid fin. And as far as, the material on it, and I've heard some people throwing it around that they think it's titanium. I think that actually comes from the Falcon 9. The original ones were like a stainless steel that was welded together. I think that's similar to what we see here, because the cost would be significantly less. If you went to titanium, then I think the cost of one of the fins would be as much as the booster.
Oh my God. That's crazy.
Yeah, so, but there's another thing on here too that's really cool. I don't know if you were going to ask me that or not, but right in the middle of the screen, you see that kind of curved, shiny part, kind of right in the that's the catch pin.
Right.
So so unlike the V2s where we have catch pins kind of below the grid fins and on the sides, they've integrated it in. So at the kind of the close in point of the swivel of the grid fin is where it'll be catching it. So that's pretty cool.
Which SpaceX also shared as well. They'll also be used for vehicle lift and catch, made possible by a new catch point addition and a lower positioning on the booster to align with the tower catch arms. Moving lower reduces the heat they receive from Starship's engines at hot staging and places the fin shaft actuator and fixed structure inside the booster's main fuel tank. So
there's a couple things to unpack there. Is by lowering it away from the engines for the hot staging, if you recall, on the last several boosters, the launches, when you look at the grid fins right after the hot staging, the grid fins are warped. because the heat of the engine warped the grid fins. So this is moving them down a little bit farther away. But that introduces kind of a new complexity, and that is the actuators, the rods, and everything that makes the grid fin work are inside the methane tank. And I think it's probably like a compartment that is separated from the actual methane fuel, but it is a new, I don't know, structural complication, I guess, to the way this is built. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it works.
Yeah. And so we have these other renders from SpaceX. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty refined. And so why do you think that they ditched that fourth fin? That seems odd to me.
One is complexity and weight. So if you have less fins, then it's not as complex, it weighs less. I think they also figured out what kind of pitch and maneuvering capabilities that they needed from that. And this design allows that to happen. And they still have that control with that loss of the weight and all that. I think maybe it also might play a role in the act of the hot staging, because if you recall the last booster, they put in some panels on the hot staging ring, and the idea was as the ship's engines lit and it started to lift away from the booster, it physically pushed the booster in a certain direction that caused the flip to go in a predictable direction. It's possible that the third fin will allow that, because as you can see, the hot staging ring is no longer separate. It's built into the booster, and it's kind of a truss-like structure, and it's open all the way around. So the only way that you could get that pitching maneuver for the booster is probably having an asymmetrical fin or a grid fin. And so when that happens, it would most likely push against that third fin, the one in the middle, and it would kind of push the booster in that direction.
Well, I have to say, it does make me a little nervous, because it seemed like, V1 of the ship was pretty good. V2, we're having all these problems. So Super Heavy booster has been very successful, and I hope that these new changes don't affect it in a negative way. But the
actually,
best part.
That's a very valid point that you bring up, and I would just reiterate that V3 booster and V3 ship are completely new. So it's like starting over again. Yeah. So we don't know how these ships are going to, and boosters are going to perform. They have all the analysis, they've done all the computer testing that they can, and they're pretty confident in it, but you have to fly it to see.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, so for Flight 10, do we know if they're going to try to catch it?
Well, originally the thought was, and when I say originally, this was before Ship 36 had its issue, and we were thinking we would have maybe 3 more V2 booster ship combination launches. They were talking about catching booster 16, and if they did, then they would have either 15, which is already flown, 16, which would have already flown, and then 17 to do the last 2 flights. But now that Ship 36 kind of blew up, we're down to the last 2 V2s, and you can clearly see they're putting all of their engineering resources into the V3s. And it's more than just the design of the ship and the booster for V3. All of the workstations, all of the assembly jigs, all of the stations in the factory and in the mega base are being converted over to V3. So, why catch a V2 booster and you're not going to need it? So there's a lot of speculation now that they're not going to catch 16 and they'll just put it into the ocean or the Gulf. But the only thing I can wonder about that is, other than booster 14, which is still out there somewhere, all the other ones, they've gone out and done salvage operations, which can't be cheap. So maybe it's cheaper to catch it and then scrap it afterwards. I don't know.
Yeah. And just to be clear, we're just seeing these new renders today for Super Heavy next generation. When do you think that will actually debut?
It's a good question, because it's not only the booster and of course the related ship, because the V3 ships have to be mated to the V3 boosters. You can't do a 2 to a 3 and vice versa. And in addition to that, you have to have the new tower, which is still being finished, and the launch mount too. So my guess would be, assuming that flight 10 and 11 go wellish, we might see flight 10 towards the end of August, and then flight 11 maybe September, October. And then we may have a period of time, maybe a couple of months before we see the next one, just because they need to get the tower, the launch mount, booster 18, and the ship, the V3 ships finished up. And one of the things on the ship that's delaying them is they need that heat shield data, which they still haven't gotten. So I think, we're going to see a little bit of a gap there. So my guess would be maybe January.
Wow. Okay. I love the jokes about, but doesn't make big waffles from Rick Barnes. People think this looks like a waffle maker.
It is the world's biggest waffle maker.
Wow. Need a lot of non-stick spray for that one.
Exactly. A couple of cans of Pam.
Yeah. So let's talk about, because I don't know when was the last launch? It feels like it's been forever.
I think it was in May, because the next one after that was going to be in June, the end of June, until 36 did its thing.
Wow. That's wild. That's crazy. No wonder my channel has had just a massive drop in everything. Views, revenue. There's no
I think SpaceX is feeling the same thing too, because I think they were expecting to be much farther along with the flight cadence than they are now. Well, but you know what? Even if Ship 36 had flown, and then 37 and 38, we're still going to have that issue with getting the tower finished up for the V3s. So, how much did they actually lose based on hardware? I don't know, maybe a couple of months.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about, I made a video recently, and thank you to anyone who watched it. I actually really enjoyed the discussion that I had with my interviewee, Christian Hubicki, who is not only on Survivor, but he's a robotics professor. And we talked about, the use case of Optimus for deep space missions and going to Mars. And we did see that tweet or post from Elon recently about there's a slight chance of, a mission to Mars, making that 2026 window, but it's probably very slight. So let's talk about, you said that you had some out of the box thinking on how they can make that work.
Yeah, well, first off, as I agree that 26 is going to be extremely unlikely. We talked about that during flight 7 and then 8 and then 9, and my continued pessimism growing on that. So I think that's the realization is there. And my point before we get into the how could they make it happen was, if they took a step back, they did a design review, they really figured out where they were with the program and kind of made some changes, and then got the ship and the booster to a reliable operating capability, and maybe not do a 26 launch, but do the next window, that would increase most likely their chances of success. And so that's kind of my thinking on that. And I think SpaceX may be maybe jumping closer to that thought. But if they really do want to launch something to Mars, there is a way of possibly doing it, but it would require a lot of things to go pretty well. And so there's a couple of assumptions that we have to make. First, let's assume that we're just talking about Starbase and not Kennedy Space Center, because the work to get Starships to launch there is happening, but I just don't know how much in 26 we're going to get out of there. So just think about Starbase. And let's just say that every 3 weeks they're able to launch something next year. And that gives you about 17 launches in a year, which is within their 25 launch window, sort of realistic. And then I'm going to take off 3 of those launches because of weather or something else. So let's say we have 14 launches that we could use in 26, and assume that they all go pretty well. Another assumption is, let's downgrade the flight to Mars to 1 ship only. So that raises the risk, because if something happens to the ship, you're not going to have anything, versus if you send like 5 or 6 of them, you have more chance. But let's just say that there's one that's going to go to Mars. For one to go to Mars, you need about 6 tankers to fill it in low Earth orbit to then go to Mars. So we're talking half of our budget of launches next year just to get one ship to Mars. So the way you could do that is, another part of the assumption is let's basically the tankers, and we'll put the heat shield on the one going to Mars, but we won't use reuse for the ship. So forget the reuse. So you can put 6 tankers into low Earth orbit. Maybe do that starting around the end of the summer next year, going into maybe October. So give you enough time to get them up there. Hopefully you can demonstrate cryo storage, and then take that one ship up there, do the refilling, and then be able to launch it at the very end of the year and try to get it to Mars. So that would be a way of doing it, but it assumes a lot. It expects everything to go really well. It assumes their designs for the refilling ships will work. And people say, well, what do you do with the 6 ships that are in orbit after they've refilled the Mars lander? My guess, my thought would be leave them there and then use them for other missions, maybe the HLS lander or something else, and then turn them into kind of like pseudo depots.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jeffrey is asking why only one ship to Mars.
Well, the main thing is that budget of flights. For every one that goes to Mars, you need about 6 roughly tankers. It may be a little bit more than that. So, if you sent 2 to Mars, you would need 12 tankers plus the 2. So your entire budget for next year would be just those 2. And that's the big problem.
To people that, I'm sure most people are familiar with it, but maybe some people are newer to SpaceX, or they're just really focused on the current state of what Starship's doing. So talk about what that sequence would look like for, sending one ship to Mars and getting all of those tankers in the right place, in what order, and how would that unfold?
Okay. Well, just generally speaking, you need to have the production rate. So you have to produce the, the tanker variants, and have all 6 of them ready to go in a sequence to be able to launch them. And let's say, right now, even a month between launches is pretty amazing. We haven't seen that at all yet, and we don't know how the new launch mount's going to do. But let's say we could shorten it down to every 3 days. That's still 18 days plus, let's say, another 5 or 6 days for downtime, weather, whatever. We're very close to a month just to launch 6 ships. And the realistic part of that is it's probably a little bit less than that. So we're probably going to have a few months to be able to launch them, just to get them in orbit and have them in position. And you're going to want them there before you launch the ship that's going to go to Mars. And then, because you're using 6 of them all in orbit, it's going to have to go from one to the other to refill until it gets the tanks completely full, so it can go to Mars. So the sequence would be, you'd have to build some to test them to make sure that they work. Then you'd have to launch them to get up into orbit, and you probably have to take a few months for that. And then you'd have to have the ship ready to go and then launch it. And then there's going to be a period of time in orbit from when it goes from one to the other. And that's probably going to take several days in between each ship. So that's why you're seeing several months in advance that this is going to have to happen.
So how far apart will those tankers be?
That's a good question. I think they just have to, figure out what is the most efficient way to do that. They could probably, if they were all in the same plane, then they'd have to be separated by time. If they're all in slightly different planes, they would be separated by distance. And what I mean by that is, you would be at one at a lower orbit, and then maybe you'd go to the next one, the next one, next one. And then the strategy would be that the last one is the highest orbit because it's closer to Mars.
Right.
Versus if you do them by time, that could work too. But, either one of them has their own challenges.
Do we know the logistics from SpaceX, whether it's going to be by time or orbital plane?
Well, the SpaceX plan is using reuse, which means tanker would go up and it would come back down, refill, and go back up. My proposition here was we get rid of reusability for these 6 and just launch them up there. So you have to build 6 ships or 6 tankers. You'd have to get them in orbit and then send the ship up and then refuel each of the 6 that are already in orbit. I think that's a really tall order because they haven't demonstrated the design for the tanker. They haven't demonstrated that they could actually do the refilling operations. They haven't demonstrated the rendezvous operations, and they haven't demonstrated a bunch of other things that they would need to use the remaining budget of flights next year to do. And in addition to that, they still need to develop the ship. They have to, develop reusability. They have to develop the HLS variant because they have to do a demo theoretically sometime next year, landing on the moon. So I mean, it's a really tall order, and I know what I'm saying is very much a stretch goal. And I think based on what Elon said, I think the realization is it would be better for them to skip this one, get another 3 years to work out all of those bugs.
Right. Skip this window to Mars, which, by the way, we have some people just checking in, wanting to know when is the next launch, Flight 10. So we're estimating 10-ish days.
Approximately, although I would say the week of the 25th is more likely. The earliest right now is the 22nd. That's based on the not Mars, but I would not be surprised if it slips a couple more days. But that's my guess, so don't bank on it.
Okay. Well, Julius wants to know, what's the most up-to-date source of information? Obviously, Joe. Where do YouTubers or where do you get your information? And it's from watching NSF, it's from watching Lab Padre, seeing the many movements, daily movements down at Starbase. And Joe was actually the one. I probably shouldn't admit this. Was the one who clued me into what happened down at Massey's. He was watching every static fire. So there's 24/7 streaming at all of these, Starbase and other locations. And so Joe is savvy enough to be able to, know what's going on just by looking at it. And
well, some of it, is like the not Mars, when those or road closures or stuff like that start showing up, it gives you a clue. And plus, we've been doing this long enough now that when you see movement of hardware, you have a pretty good idea of, okay, they're moving that because they intend to do this with it. If they do that with it, then it's going to mean, the next couple of things. So it's like putting pieces of information together. And like you say, some of the other YouTubers, NSF, Lab Padre, RGB, Ariel, what about it? All those guys have pieces of the puzzle that we can put it together.
Yeah, no, it's so helpful to have their streams and amazing camera quality. I do not have enough money to set that up, but it's great that they have it for us and we can piece it together. But yeah, I mean, I feel like, we're getting close, but I really thought that it would be sooner. And I think they've done quite well considering the delay that Massey's, kind of getting.
I get the feeling right now for like Flight 10 and Flight 11 with the V2 ships, even though it's important for them to fly them and get the data on the heat shield and everything, it's the same feeling I had for IFT-1. And that was, they just wanted to get rid of it because it was so old. They wanted to move on to the next thing.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, talk about, because we have two V2 ships left.
Yeah.
Only 2. And there was this idea that we talked about previously of like, do they just scrap them and move forward, or do they fly them knowing that, they'll be obsolete soon? And for sure, you want to fly them. They're somewhat ready to go, and hopefully they survive.
Yeah. By the way, that reminded me of something else you were asking, or I think one of your viewers asked, when do we think V3s may fly and what time frame that is? One other huge part of that picture is the V3 Raptors and where they are in the production cycle. Because we know we've seen a bunch at McGregor doing all kinds of testing, but from what I'm hearing and what I understand is all the ones that we're seeing up until right now are not flight qualified hardware, which means that they need to start a production line. So for every launch, you need 39 Raptors. So they need to get to a point where they're pumping those out pretty quickly. So soon we're going to start needing to see Raptor V3s showing up at Starbase so they can start installing them into something. And so that's another big limiting factor, or in that critical chain of what do we need before we can see the V3's flight.
I've been thinking about, just because I need to get some better videos so you guys watch my videos. And I was thinking about driving out to McGregor and just like interviewing people that live there about what it's like to have this, testing site in their backyard, and potentially catching a test while I'm there. I think that it'd be cool. Have you ever been there?
I have been by it, but I've never stopped there to take a look. And NSF has got a bunch of cameras to see it, but from what I understand is it's not like Starbase where you can show up and see all the stuff really, really close. It's much farther away.
I still think it would be an interesting sort of human interest story, potentially. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe on the way you could stop at Briggs and check into Firefly and see what they're doing up there too.
I just sent them an email yesterday and I have not heard back yet, but I told them, I was like, hey, I interviewed you guys in December of 23. I'm not just a rando. I've already been in the facility, and I would love to catch up with them, especially since they've had so much success since my first tour. So they're right in our backyard here. If I'm able to do it, would you want to go?
Sure. It's been a while since I've been there, and I would love to see what they've done. They've done so much infrastructure upgrades. It's not even funny.
We should try to plan that. Hopefully they interview me or answer me. But yeah, those are just some out of the box ideas. I feel like, with the lull in actual Starship launches, it's been, tough to have video ideas.
Yeah. Although, the good thing is some of the other companies are starting to see things. We just saw ULA launch their Vulcan on a USSF launch yesterday. And so that went. So maybe we'll start seeing a little bit of uptick on that. And Blue Origin is talking about some of their Mars mission hardware and all that. So maybe enough time has passed that everybody's getting their stuff mature enough that maybe we'll start seeing a lot more than just SpaceX. We'll see a bunch of different companies launching.
Let's see. Yeah, I'm reading some of the comments here. Joe, not you, but a different Joe, says the video of the ULA launch yesterday would be great. I watched from 50 miles away, and the plume changed colors 4 times from red to blue. That is so cool.
Yeah, that is just sort of a cool thing when you have solid rockets on a methane, and the Blue Origin engines, the BE4s, are very blue.
Yes, for sure. Which, by the way, if you guys have any questions or just any comments, we're just kind of casually chatting right now. And so if you have any questions or comments for us, I'd love to see them. Nicholas Poindexter says, read Eric Berger's Liftoff and Reentry recently, or read a book about Starbase would be awesome. Yeah. I mean, Reentry was wonderful. Eric is a fantastic author. Actually, I have it somewhere in here. But yeah.
You're talking about McGregor and going up there and seeing all that stuff, talking to people around what it's like. In Liftoff, they actually talked about the early days where they were testing out engines, and it got the attention of the security detail for President Bush.
Yeah. Wasn't there also like an anecdote about the cows or something? Freaking out.
I think so. Yeah. For a while they were really, skittish, but now they don't even notice anymore.
Yeah. So now they're, desensitized. No, I think it'd be fun. I mean, McGregor's not that far away from Austin.
Right.
But yeah, good recommendation. Liftoff and Reentry, great books. I've read both of them. Let's see here. Are we ever going to get a Starship night launch? Joe wants to know. I sure hope so. I would love to see a Starship night launch. I've been hoping that
Yeah, I think we will. Part of the environmental, request shows that there is a certain number that are for night. Right now, the only thing that's really preventing them from moving it around too much is that they want to land it in the Indian Ocean and get it in the daytime.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about this is if they launch, let's say the 25th of August when we get down there, if they launch at 6:30 at night, that's getting really close to, you know, what we call civil twilight, which is close to when the sun's going down. So it will be closer to a night launch. And then, it's not going to recover it for a while, but if the booster comes back at that time, it will be almost like a night catch.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It would be great to see. Let's see. Steve says, I'd love to know both of your backgrounds. Well, Steve, I'll go first.
Okay.
Uh, I was in TV news for almost 10 years, reporting on anything from fires, car accidents, puppy of the week, city council meetings, you name it. And wasn't making a lot of money. And so decided to start a YouTube channel on the side. I wasn't originally covering SpaceX content. I was doing more like travel Airbnb vlogging, which they were good videos, but they weren't taking off. And then I made a video about Starlink in the very early beta testing days. And that sort of, grew overnight, and started building up the channel, making more videos. I came to a crossroads where I'm like, okay, I can either stay in news, which is unfulfilling, or I can go all in on the YouTube channel and take my reporting skills and report on space full time. And so that's exactly what I've done now for over 3 years, just recently passed the 3 years of self-employment mark. And then I think I've been on the channel for maybe 4.5 years now, but I'm surprised because in the beginning I gave myself 1 year to make it work. If I couldn't self-sustain after a year, I'd need to, go back into news. And now it's been over 3 years of full-time Ellie in space, and I'm not homeless. And so it's been really cool. So that's some of my background. And yeah, it's been a wild ride.
All right. Just brief. Mine is totally different. I was never in news, but I was always interested in physics and astronomy. I wanted to be an astronaut. I went to the Air Force Academy. I studied astronautical engineering, and then I went off to get double masters in aero and astro. I became a pilot, and I wanted to do all the things to become an astronaut, and kind of pursued that path. Spent an entire career in the Air Force, and never got a chance to be the astronaut thing, but space has always been my primary background and my primary interest. And this gives me a chance to kind of delve into that subject, which I like a lot.
You do a great job. I wanted to ask, actually, I've been seeing, I guess, Jared Isaacman and the Polaris program have been taking certain YouTubers and influencers on fighter jet rides. Did you ever fly that yourself?
I have, yeah. I mean, there's a picture of me right here. I was in a T-38 when I did that, and I've flown F-16s. I've flown T1s, T-38s, T-37s. I was a glider instructor. I flew KC-135s, and I even flew a C-17.
So you've done like the Top Gun style of like flying that you would think of.
Yeah, I mean, when I was at Shepherd, which is where this was here, that was called Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training, and we did a lot of four-ship and low levels, a lot more than you do with normal pilot training.
If I got sick on 0G, do you think that there's no way in hell I'd be able to handle that?
Well, I don't know. I think there's a physiological part of it, but I think there's a lot of it psychological too. You kind of work yourself up to thinking you're going to get sick.
Well, that's funny because Scott Manley recently, we were talking about, my sickness on 0G and stuff. And he's like, you just need to train your way out of it. And I'm like, is that possible? I really wonder if you could.
I mean, when you go through pilot training, there's all kinds of physiological training that you do. And, the Vertigon, I think, is this chair thing where they spin you in 3 different directions, and you learn to know how your vestibular system works and just get used to that. Paragliding was part of that. The altitude chamber is part of that. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that you do.
Oh, actually, sorry, I keep going off on random tangents, but this is a side note. I'm going to Cappadocia as part of my honeymoon, and it's like the hot air balloon capital of the world. Okay. And you guys in the comments who's watching can weigh in. I'm terrified to ride in one. Would I be safe? Do you know?
I think so.
I mean, are, have you been in a hot air balloon?
I have not been in a hot air balloon. I have been to Cappadocia, though. It's a pretty beautiful place. There's a lot of history on that. But as far as the balloon, every once in a while something goes wrong and you hear about the news, but you don't hear about the thousands and thousands that go right. So I think you'll be fine.
Okay.
I mean, it will be loud because when they use the propane to keep the air hot in the balloon, that's pretty loud. So you'll see that. But
Well,
otherwise, it'd be kind of cool. You're just sort of floating there.
comments seem to be split so far. I still haven't made my mind up about it. I may just enjoy the sights. I don't know. But
Well,
anyway,
you know
that's
about me. Anything that's aviation, I'll do.
yeah, you went in the red line helicopter. I'm
That's
not.
awesome.
And your pilot was like 18. He
That's
wasn't.
okay.
He looked very young. Rick Barnes wants to know what's with eSheriff. I assume you're talking about eSheriff TV, my handle. My real name is not Ellie, and my last name is not Space. My name is Eliana Sheriff. So when I was in the TV news biz, I made my handle eSheriff TV, as many news reporters did, blank blank TV, whatever. So that is what's with the eSheriff. Space Mike wants to know, have I ever met or talked to Vintage Space? Would you be interested in doing an Ellie Learn series learning about rocket history? I would be interested. However, I reached out to her a few times when I first started my channel, and it took her a while to respond to me. And then when she finally answered, she said, hey, it's nothing personal, but I've essentially, gotten out of the game of YouTube, and I'm not interested. It looks like perhaps maybe she's coming back into the YouTube scene. So maybe worth revisiting.
Cool.
I have tried that. People are always like, you need to reach out to Gwen Shotwell. You need to do this. I'm like, I have. I already have. Whatever you've thought of as a person or, company that I should interview, it's likely I have already reached out, but I digress. Let's see here. Joe, when were you at Shepherd? I was there for a number of times with the Air Force Reserve.
Okay. Well, I have a little bit of a history on that. I was originally there in 89 through 90, and then I actually had a period of time where I was grounded and I couldn't fly. And then I went back and I was there in 91 and graduated in 92. I was at 9205 for my graduating class.
That's when I was born.
Oh, wow.
No, I'm starting to feel old, man.
Oh, please.
Do you?
No.
I
think a lot of it is just a mental situation.
But I don't mentally feel old, and I don't feel like I even look my age. But when I see my age or think about it, I'm like, that sounds older to me.
Oh,
I don't identify with it.
I think that'll be the case forever.
Okay, so we have some more comments. Seems like people are a bit split on the hot air balloon, but that's just a little.
I say go for it. Why not?
Well, I guess which, by the way, it is a year anniversary of. Someone just reminded me this in the beginning of the chat. Sorry, let me just pull it up. It's around a year anniversary of the best-selling shirt on my channel. Really? So this lovely Mechazilla design that I'm sure you remember so well, I released this around Flight 5 about a year ago. And
wow, just hard to believe it's been a year.
Yeah, well, close to a year, because Flight 5 was October 5th. So I think I put the design out late August, so it's about a year for the design. But yes, people are saying I have that shirt, and someone in the beginning of the chat said that it's their favorite design. So appreciate you guys supporting my channel and my designs. I thought it was pretty cool too. And yeah, so what did we miss? Is there anything we missed? Just to recap for people who maybe didn't hear it, we're thinking that Flight 10 could be possibly less than 2 weeks away if all goes right.
Yeah, I think we're within that 2-week window. they did the spin prime today. So, as long as they don't discover anything when they take the ship back, I think we're pressing on. So it's really just how long does it take to get the ship ready, and how long does it take to get the launch mount ready to do a full stack, and then we're going to go for it. The other thing, I guess, I don't know if we really missed it, but I would just remind people again, because I actually, in my robotaxi ride today, I had a gentleman that was Australian but came to the United States from England because he lives over there now. And he was asking whether or not he should go to Starbase. And I said, well, if you've ever thought about going, I would highly recommend you go and do it as soon as you can, because the amount of infrastructure changes, the things that they're building are like walls and you're getting farther and farther away. And one of the big things is now right on the beach, they're putting that air separator unit, so they can make oxygen and nitrogen. And that's yet another thing that's pushing us farther away.
Right.
So if you can go, I would go as soon as you can.
It's so crazy to me. So my first trip to Starbase was in September of 2021. It's so crazy. So it's almost been 4 years. Oh my God. But, not only did I not realize what a big part of my life Starbase would become, I didn't know how much it would change. Oh my goodness. It changes. I mean, it changes so much, even just from, the couple months where in between launches. It's unbelievable how much.
I think it may be accurate to say that there is nothing left from your first visit there anymore. I think everything has been changed.
Even parts of the pad, what is it? Is it A or 1? I forgot.
Well, at that time, I think they were just building it. I don't know how much of it was done. Maybe that is the only thing that's left, but all of the stuff at the production site, all that is completely new.
Yeah, that's crazy. Even the building where I interviewed Elon.
Yeah, it's gone.
There.
Yeah, it's getting CFA piles put into that area right now for the Gigabay.
I wonder what happened to that little rocket-shaped trash can.
They probably saved it. They moved it somewhere.
I want one of those. Okay. So we have a comment about my recent trip to the Tesla diner, which you have not been there yet, right?
I have not.
Oh, Joe. Wow. Mike wants to know, would you recommend the Tesla drive-in for non-Tesla owners? Which, yes, if you don't have a Tesla, you're not allowed to park there, which totally makes sense. We just parked on the street. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth, stopping by if you're a fan. I don't know if I'd sit through a bunch of traffic to go to it, if I'm being honest. I mean, we were not there that long. But it was cool. It was nice to see it. I mean, I really hope that they do make one down at Starbase soon, as Elon has said that they will. I think that they're a really cool addition, and for the purposes of charging, I mean, it's a great spot, better than some of these random superchargers next to like a Dollar General that's like across the street.
Well, I would say that for Starbase, the two reasons of having the diner there that I think everybody would appreciate: one, bathrooms.
I was going to say bathrooms.
And then two, chargers.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, that's one thing. Whenever I drive down there, it's like it only actually takes me 2 charges, but then I always top off for quite a bit, because then I know I'm going to drive down to Starbase, and, you don't want to be caught, stranded down there. So yeah, I hope that they make that soon.
Yeah, this one, the diner itself took several years, so I don't know if we're talking 26 or 27, but eventually it'll be done.
It took like 7 years.
Yeah, it took a long time.
That's why I was like, I thought it kind of disappeared, but I guess it didn't. So that's good. Well, yeah, I think that is about it as far as the Starship front. Is there anything else big that I'm missing? I know that we saw Sean Duffy, who's the interim NASA leader, who apparently has some power, talk about having a nuclear reactor on the moon. I recently watched an interview with Neil deGrasse Tyson about this, and Jared Isaacman spoke out in favor of it. So,
Mhm.
some people were like, oh, like they were like dissing it, like, oh, of course, this is what Sean Duffy would do. But it's like, well, Jared Isaacman, who I kind of respect his opinion, says it's a good idea. So, did you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I do. We'll have to see if on the political and the budgeting sides of the fence actually works out. But if you're thinking about an off-world economy, or in this case, an off-world location, an outpost or base, and you think about the critical needed things to make that base work, power is by far the number one, because you can't build the base, you can't build the, like we've been at Astroport here in San Antonio. We went and visited them. They want to make the bricks out of the regolith so they have landing pads. That takes a lot of energy. So everything takes a lot of energy. So if you can put a power source, especially on the southern pole of the moon, where because of the angle of the sun, it's very dark, long shadows, all that, having a nuclear power plant would be very good. And this particular one, I think he's talking about 100 megawatts. And the reason why that's important is most of the ones I've seen from NASA up until now have been around the 10 kilowatt range. So this is significantly more. So if you were to have that there, and if it were operational, then it would allow for rapid building and habitation of a lot of the facilities there, and you would be able to do a lot. So just from that standpoint alone, energy is probably the number one critical element. So if they could make that happen, I would be all for it. Sort of related to that is with this current administration, they're really pushing nuclear, and there's a lot of policies that they're putting out. They're trying to get rid of a lot of regulations that have slowed things down. And just I think yesterday, several, if you want to call them startups, one of them is Allo Atomics. It's a company that I have followed and I've done videos on. They're actually in Austin. But they're one of, I think, 7 companies that are put on contract to basically have a operating nuclear power plant going critical, meaning that they are able to generate power by next July. So, there's a lot of work to try to make that happen. 100 megawatts is a lot, but it is interesting to see us go for that. So anyway, from the concept, I'm all for it. I think it's necessary. Will it actually happen? That's a big question. And for sure, to make it happen, you need Starship.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Which, by the way, Ian wants to know, how are they going to get Starships to Kennedy? They're going to start off via barge.
Yeah, for the first couple, will be barge. The boosters have to be barged for what? Because they don't have the performance to be able to take off and fly and be caught over at Kennedy Space Center. So the boosters cannot do that. The ships, on the other hand, can. So at some intermediate point, you may see them launch a ship and catch it there. In a way, that would be good practice, because when the ships are coming back from orbit, they're going to have to fly over part of Florida anyway. So if they go from Texas over there, they're going to have to basically take the same route. So the ships could do it. The boosters cannot. There's actually over at Sanchez, which is part of the production site at Starbase, where it looks like some of the jigs that are needed to horizontally transfer boosters and ships are under construction. So, they're going to have to do that. If, early on I was talking about, I'm not sure how much we can expect for Kennedy Space Center for Starship launches, but certainly they need to have ships and boosters. So being able to ship them out there is a critical item that it looks like they are working on.
Yeah. I wonder when that first launch will be.
I don't know. I mean, I think the tower, the launch site by itself is at least 6 months behind what we're seeing at Starbase. And if Starbase isn't ready till, let's say, January, that means middle of next year. So that's why when I did the Mars thing, I just assumed we're not going to getting anything from Kennedy next year, and let's just focus on Starbase, because we don't know.
Yeah. Were you familiar with the Mars One mission?
Yeah, the scam. Sorry.
No, I know it is. I didn't even know. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
And I recently, I was just trying to find story ideas. I know it sounds stupid, but it's like I need to make some better content here. And so I was thinking of, well, where can I find people that would accept a one-way trip to Mars just as like interesting interview subjects, like dead serious hardcore people. And then I'm like, oh, there was this Mars One mission that I've never heard of. And they're going to fund it through a reality show, and it kind of ran from like 2012 to 2018 or 19, and then obviously it was a scam. A lot of that sort of hinged on Starship, or capabilities that Starship would have. Kind of reminds me of the Dear Moon stuff as well, with that being scrapped because Starship wasn't ready. But what do you remember about the Mars One? Were you ever interested in it, or did you always know that it was,
I just knew, practically it just didn't have any of the hardware, any of the infrastructure, any of the stuff that you would need to actually make it happen. I think of things like that, the Dear Moon mission. Even it's not really a mission as far as leaving the Earth, but there was Biosphere 2 out in Arizona, where the whole idea was to put people into this enclosed environment and have them live for a year and simulate things. Not even that really worked out. There was a lot of problems, and it turned out that they were kind of cheating along the way anyway. So I just lumped them all into the category of interesting ideas that are maybe 50 years before their time. Because we need to have, all the stuff that SpaceX is doing right now with the actual hardware is what is needed to make Mars happen. And you see how hard it is even for SpaceX. So, we need to have Starship well developed and very operational before we really even start thinking about stuff like that, in my opinion. I would love to see stuff like that happen. I just don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime, unfortunately.
I feel like if anyone were to be able to make it succeed, if somehow Mr. Beast could get involved with his money, resources, reach, to like Elon Musk, Mr. Beast collabing on some sort of like Mars, get the kids interested. And
well, you know what Mr. Beast has going for himself? It's not just the money and all that stuff, is he's young.
Yeah.
That's going to be critical. So even 50 years from now, he'll be like 75 or something like that. So he'll still be young enough to maybe actually do something and go to Mars.
Yep.
I really do think it's going to be more like 50 years. I know Elon talks about 20 or 30 years. I really do think it's going to be more than that, just because it's just so complex.
Well, we have some more questions rolling in. Furaha, I don't know if I'm saying that right, wants to know if I'm going to ever interview Richard Branson. I have not, do not have that on the docket yet, and wants to know if you've ever met Richard Branson.
I have not. I obviously know who he is, but
Sure, Richard Branson.
I just wonder, it seems like his efforts in space are kind of fizzling out.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And I know they've been doing some work on the next version of their ship, but I haven't heard anything in a while. The last I had heard was, they're doing it, but finances were not great, and they ended up selling, I think is it Virgin Orbit that they ended up selling, and companies like Rocket Lab ended up buying some of their facilities.
Yeah, I think so. Julius wants to know, would permanent Mars colonies be likely to resemble the TV show Silo, deep cylinders that each house thousands of people? Which, by the way, have you seen Silo? It's amazing.
I have not, actually.
Okay, well, you need to fix that. But what do you think about that idea?
Well, describe what the deep cylinders at each house. Is it like straight down into the ground, or is it just completely? Okay, so is it open on like the top? Like a dome or something?
They're not really open on the top, no.
So it's completely underground?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where the Boring Company idea comes into, is that they would be doing a lot of stuff subterranean there, and the main reasons are for radiation and micrometeorite protection. So it is possible. But I still think at some point people want to be able to see the sun. They want to see outside. They can't just be in a cave forever. So I think it's possible, maybe with virtual reality and screens and that kind of stuff, you can get away with it. But I don't know. It may be something that we see. I don't think that we're going to see it in the nearest future. I think it's going to be a while from now.
Well, Eric wants to know, coming into this late, so excuse me if already discussed, but any thoughts on what catch method will be for Starship? I don't see the hooks in the render, which.
Well, what this is, and that in the render that they see.
Yeah, let me go to the render.
Yeah, I would say, one, be very careful on renders. They're not always accurate, so they sometimes omit things. But yeah, if you go up to the top, in theory, somewhere down along the line of the heat shields, we should see something that sticks out. They're going to have something similar to that, and it will look a lot like most likely what you see on the new grid fins. It'll be some similar design, because both have to be able to be operational on the chopsticks, and they have a little bit different rail system. But yeah, I don't see it on there, but like I said, it's a render, and the renders have proven to not always be 100% accurate.
They'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a way, that's sort of what V2 is all about, is they wanted to test out their thoughts to see if it works. And it's not just the hooks that are to be caught, but it's also the heat shields around them to see, does that make them, do they survive with the reentry? And we don't know because they haven't reentered successfully.
Well, here's another question. I'm actually not as familiar with this one. Levi wants to know, is there any news on the Dragonfly mission to Saturn Titan?
What I think you're actually asking is, with all the budget cuts and everything, is it safe? And I don't know. That is a really great question, because a lot of science missions, even active missions, are at risk. And I know that they've been talking about Congress may try to put the budget back in and add some more money in, but from what I'm hearing, with Sean Duffy being with NASA and with the OMB kind of directing where we're going with the budget, it may be the president budget after all, which is going to affect a lot of missions. And I don't know if Dragonfly is being affected or not. I hope not. I hope that they're able to figure out a way of restoring some of the funds so that we can keep the science missions going. But it's a tough time right now, and I think NASA's going to be affected with losing people, maybe consolidation, obviously the budget. And I think that's why Jared would have been great, is we need an actual administrator to be able to craft what is the objectives for NASA, what are their priorities, and how are they going to move forward, and how are they going to reshape themselves under this new budget regime. And even with Sean Duffy there, he's sort of a temporary anyway. I think his time runs out around January, and somebody else is going to have to be put into place there too. So it's not helpful. And I know that didn't completely answer your question, but I think that's the gist, is it being cut financially or not? And I don't know.
I would like to interview Sean Duffy if I can. I was looking into his bio. He has 9 kids. Dang.
Following after Elon.
Yeah. Timothy wants to know, are you going to visit Spaceport America? I have no current plans, although I would love to check it out, especially because it's in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. That's a pretty cool name for a town. So I've never been. Have you?
I've been to Truth or Consequences, but I've not been to Spaceport America. And I'm not sure what would be going on there exactly. I mean, they're still developing and trying to build their next ship. So,
well, maybe someday, but not. I have never been as of now. David wants to know, is Artemis going to stop at 3? Artemis 3 mission. Has anyone thought about launching Orion on Heavy?
Yeah, well, that kind of is a sort of a budget and NASA direction kind of question. I know Congress wants to continue with 4 and 5. They have the mobile launch platform that's way over budget, but being put together. And
we both saw it. It's very unfinished.
Yeah. My guess is at the end of the day, 3 might be it. We may get to 4, but I think it may be just there just because of budgets and priorities. But I think what the administration is sort of counting on is, to be honest, Starship again. If they can get Starship working, then it can replace what the SLS would have done in theory. And then they could leverage that and maybe the New Glenn and some of Blue Origin's landers and kind of maybe cobble something together. I don't know. It is a good question because it's not just a budget thing, but it's also a kind of congressional thing. It's a industry thing. It's a jobs thing. And as far as launching Orion on Heavy, first of all, Falcon Heavy is not human rated, so they need to go through that step. And SpaceX has said they do not want to human rate Falcon Heavy. So you'd have to get over that hurdle first before you'd even get to the point of maybe going Orion.
Why do they not want to?
There's no real need for that. I think they wanted to put all their effort into Starship because Falcon Heavy and Falcon is kind of the past, and they want to do everything on Starship. So why dedicate resources when you've got a massive program? It's kind of like, going to Tesla thing. Recently, Tesla just canceled the Dojo program, which is a computer system that they were trying to build a chip and a supercomputer cluster. They recently just decided to cancel that, and part of the reason why is that they can't dedicate resources to multiple different efforts, so they needed to cut one so they could put the efforts into another. And I think that's the same thing with SpaceX and the Falcon series versus the Starship.
And this is an interesting story idea from Craig. If you're looking for possible content for your channel, I would think people would be interested if you could do some content on the self-propelled modular transporter jets,
MTs.
MTs, and if I could interview a driver. So yeah, if anyone knows a driver, I would love to interview them. That'd be very cool. How do you think I could find a driver, Joe?
Well, you could approach it a different way. If you don't care if it's a SpaceX driver, SPMTs are actually used even at Giga Texas. They use that to move heavy things around. So there are companies that use SPMTs that you could maybe work with them.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Thank you for the idea.
Yeah, they use it for moving like stamping press parts, the really, really large, heavy things.
Wow. Well, that is our update. I didn't expect to go this long, but thank you, Joe, for giving us some of your time this evening. It is, what is it, Wednesday? Wow, Wednesday. Yep. I just, side note, personal note, I just picked up my wedding dress, which is finally finished today. So if you guys don't know, you buy a wedding dress, but then you have to do a bunch of alterations and you have to have it fit you properly and be the right length. And so it took about, I guess, 35 to 40 hours of work for the women who worked on it. And I'm glad that I don't have to do that because it looks very complicated, but 45 days.
I'll be completely honest with you. I am so glad I don't have to worry about a wedding dress.
Yeah. Well, okay. So it's crazy because I spent almost as much in tailoring as I did on the dress.
Wow.
So it literally doubled the cost of it. But looking at what they had to do, I mean, I understand it. I honestly think they could have charged more, but I'm glad that, but it was just, it's crazy. So
here's a dumb question is, why can you not have it fitted and then they make it based on your fitting before why do you have to buy one and then alter it?
Oh, they're just like mass produced. It probably would be more expensive that way. Here's the thing. Most dresses, you have to order like months in advance. I had to go to a special bridal shop where you could buy it off the rack the day of. Most women, because most people plan like a year in advance. We're just getting married quick because, we want to. But, most people, they have a lot more time to put into it. But I needed something that I could take home that same day. And so perhaps, if that would have been the case, maybe it would have been different. But it's also, I think, cheaper to do it off the rack. But that was a process. I had to do multiple fittings and, it's just, It's crazy. It's crazy. So I hope that it looks good. I hope that when I share my pictures that you guys all think I look hot.
There's only one person that should see you and think you're hot.
No, I want everyone to think that. I want everyone to approve and say, "Hey, dude, your wife is hot." But yeah, so 45 days, 45 days. It's kind of crazy. It's really crazy. Uh, but all right. Well, thank you guys for watching our live stream. If we do happen to have a launch, I plan to be at it. I'm sure Joe does. And that's all we got for now. So with that, good evening, good night, have a great night, and I'll see you guys